which, to be fair, he absolutely was. The courtiers were dressed in outfits that seemed to defy both gravity and good taste, with layers of flowing fabric, glowing jewels, and metallic accents that shimmered with every movement. Martin, in stark contrast, had been outfitted in what Zetheria had assured him was a formal Earthling-inspired ensemble. To Martin, it looked like a mix between a tuxedo and something a space wizard might wear. The long dark coat trailed behind him like a cape, and the intricate silver embroidery on the lapels made him feel like he'd wandered onto the set of an intergalactic fashion show. He wasn't sure if it made him look dignified or ridiculous, but either way, it didn't matter. The moment he stepped into the hall beside Zetheria, every pair of eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, turned to him. Hi, Martin said, giving a small, awkward wave. The room remained utterly silent. Zetheria, ever composed, stepped forward and addressed the gathered crowd. "Honored members of the court," she began, her voice clear and commanding, "I return to you with unexpected news. By the customs of our people, I have accepted a formal proposal of union. Allow me to introduce my chosen consort, Martin Hensley of Earth." The silence that followed was so intense, Martin could have sworn he heard his own heartbeat. Then, all at once, the room erupted into a cacophony of voices. Some of the courtiers seemed outraged, others merely bewildered. A few, to Martin's relief, appeared amused, though whether that was at his expense he couldn't tell. The same advisor who had greeted them at the landing platform, a tall, stern man named Varen, stepped forward, raising a hand to quiet the room. The crowd's voices fell to murmurs as he addressed Zetheria. "Your Majesty," Varen said, his tone measured but clearly skeptical, "if I may speak candidly, this Earthling does not appear to understand the gravity of his position. Are we to believe that this—" He paused, as if searching for the least insulting term. "Individual is to stand beside you as consort and potential co-ruler?" "Potential what now?" Martin blurted out, his voice rising in panic. He turned to Zetheria. "You didn't mention anything about co-ruling. I thought this was more of a ceremonial thing, like, hey, look, I'm married to a queen, but I still get to go home and binge-watch TV." Zeitheria's lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile threatening to break through her otherwise stoic expression. "As my consort, you will, in time, share certain responsibilities. It is not merely ceremonial." Martin stared at her, his brain struggling to process the words. "You've got to be kidding me." "I assure you," Zetheria said, her tone calm, "I am not." Before Martin could spiral any further, Varen stepped in, his expression darkening. "Your Majesty," he said, "this matter cannot be decided so lightly. The court must deliberate. The future of Zalvona is at stake, and we cannot afford to take unnecessary risks." Martin felt a pang of relief. Finally, someone was talking sense. "Yes, deliberate. Take all the time you need. Weeks, months, years even. No rush." The crowd erupted into murmurs again, and Zetheria raised a hand to silence them. "The court may deliberate," she said firmly, "but know this. The decision has been made. Martin Hensley is my chosen consort, and I will not entertain challenges to his place at my side." Her words hung in the air like a thunderclap, and the room fell silent once more. Even Varen looked momentarily taken aback, though he quickly masked it with a curt nod. "As you wish, Your Majesty," he said, though the tension in his voice was unmistakable. The formalities concluded, Zetheria turned to Martin and gestured for him to follow her. Relieved to escape the oppressive stares of the court, Martin trailed after her as they exited the grand hall and entered a quieter, more private corridor. "Okay," Martin said as soon as they were alone. "I know I've said this like 10 times already, but what the hell is going on?" "You are fulfilling the role of my consort," Zetheria replied, her tone matter-of-fact. "Yeah, I got that part," Martin said. "But why me? I mean, there's got to be a ton of eligible alien bachelors out there who would kill for this job. Why not pick one of them?" Zetheria stopped walking and turned to face him. "Do you truly believe this is a role anyone would desire?" Martin hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden intensity in her voice. Well, yeah. You're a queen. That's kind of a big deal. Being queen is not a privilege, Cytherea said quietly. It is a duty, a burden, and those who stand beside me must bear it as well. Martin frowned, unsure how to respond. He'd always thought of royalty as glamorous and exciting, the kind of life most people could only dream of, but the look in Cytherea's eyes told a different story, one of weight and isolation that he couldn't begin to understand. Okay, he said after a moment, but that still doesn't explain why me. I'm just a guy. I'm not special or brave or, well, anything really. I'm the furthest thing from a royal consort you could possibly find. Cytherea's expression softened, and for the first time Martin saw a hint of vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. You underestimate yourself, she said. When you proposed, intentionally or not, you showed courage and sincerity, qualities that are far too rare in those who seek power. Martin snorted. Yeah, well, don't get used to it. Most of the time, I'm more of a run away and make bad jokes kind of guy. Cytherea's lips curved into a small, almost reluctant smile. Perhaps, but you are here nonetheless, and that, Martin Hensley, is more than enough for now. Her words lingered in the air as they continued down the corridor, the silence between them surprisingly comfortable. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, Martin felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name, something that felt almost like hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could survive this after all. The next morning, or at least what Martin assumed was morning, given the faintly golden light spilling through the intricate, glowing lattice of Cytherea's royal chambers, he woke to the realization that this wasn't a weird dream. It was his life now. He lay sprawled on what could only be described as the most unnecessarily comfortable bed in existence, surrounded by soft, weightless fabrics that seemed to shift and shimmer with his every movement. The ceiling above him was a mosaic of constellations, gently pulsating in time with some unseen rhythm. For a moment, he marveled at the sheer beauty of it all before the memories of the previous day came crashing back in. Oh, right, he muttered, covering his face with a hand. I accidentally got engaged to an alien queen. Awesome. A gentle chime interrupted his self-pity, and the far wall shimmered as a door slid open. Cytherea entered, looking as composed and radiant as ever. She was dressed in a sleek silver robe that caught the light in a way that made her seem almost ethereal. Good morning, Martin, she said, her tone calm, but carrying an edge of amusement. Morning? Martin sat up, his hair sticking out at odd angles. Is it actually morning, or is time just whatever you want it to be on this ship? Zalvona operates on a standardized rotational cycle, Cytherea replied, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. So, yes, it is morning. For you, at least. Martin groaned, running a hand through his hair. Great. I'm on alien time now. What's next? Breakfast? A tour? Another round of let's all stare at the weird Earth guy in the royal court? Cytherea tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Today you will begin your orientation. Orientation? Martin repeated, frowning. That sounds suspiciously like school. Please tell me I don't have to do homework. Not quite, Cytherea said, her tone betraying a flicker of amusement. It is customary for new consorts to undergo a period of instruction. You must learn our culture, our traditions, and your responsibilities. Martin sighed, flopping back onto the bed. Fantastic. Alien etiquette lessons. Just what I always wanted. Cytherea stepped closer, her gaze softening. I understand this is difficult for you, but it is necessary. The court is watching closely and your actions reflect upon both of us. Martin propped himself up on one elbow, studying her. For all her poise and confidence, there was something in her voice, a trace of vulnerability she was trying to hide. Okay, he said after a moment. Fine, I'll do the orientation thing, but only because you asked nicely. Cytherea arched an eyebrow. I was not aware I had asked. Yeah, well, you've got that whole regal please do this or I'll disintegrate you vibe going on, Martin said with a grin. It's very convincing. To his surprise, Zetheria chuckled softly. Your humor is unique, Martin Hensley. Unique good or unique bad? He asked. She didn't answer directly, but the faint smile on her lips was enough. The orientation began in a room that looked like the offspring of a library and a hologram factory. Shelves of glowing crystalline tablets lined the walls, while floating displays projected scenes of Zalvonian history, culture, and, of course, etiquette. Martin sat at a sleek, curved desk, staring blankly at a holographic instructor who looked like someone had crossed an owl with a jellyfish. The instructor's voice was deep and melodic, but the content was, in Martin's opinion, mind-numbingly dull. And so, the instructor droned, the ceremonial bow must be executed at a precise angle of 32 degrees to convey the appropriate level of respect. Martin yawned, his head drooping. 32 degrees, got it. Super important. Can't have anyone thinking I'm disrespecting their bow angles. Martin, Zetheria said sharply, seated beside him. Pay attention. I am paying attention, Martin protested, sitting up straighter. Look, I even wrote it down. He held up a small, sleek tablet on which he had scrawled a crude doodle of an alien bowing. Zetheria gave him a withering look. Okay, fine, Martin muttered, setting the tablet down. But seriously, do I really need to know all this? Can't I just, wing it? Smile, shake hands, nod a lot? That usually works. Your actions have far-reaching consequences, Zetheria said, her tone firm. Every gesture, every word will be scrutinized. If you are not careful, you could inadvertently insult an entire delegation. Great, Martin said, slumping in his seat. No pressure or anything. The holographic instructor continued, launching into an explanation of Zalvonian dining customs. Martin tried to focus, but his mind kept wandering. He glanced at Zetheria, who was listening intently, her expression calm but focused. You really take this stuff seriously, huh? Martin said quietly. It is my duty, Zetheria replied without looking at him. Yeah, I get that, Martin said. But don't you ever, I don't know, wish you could just be normal for a day? No rules, no court, no responsibilities? Zetheria hesitated, her gaze flickering toward him. For a moment she seemed on the verge of saying something, but then she shook her head. Wishing does not change reality. Martin frowned. Maybe not, but it helps. You should try it sometime. She didn't respond, but the brief flicker of emotion in her eyes told him he'd struck a nerve. By the time the session ended, Martin's brain felt like it had been put through a blender. He staggered out of the room, rubbing his temples. I don't know how you do this every day, he said to Zetheria. It is not easy, she admitted, but it is necessary. Yeah, I'm starting to pick up on the theme here, Martin said. Necessary is basically your motto, isn't it? She gave him a sidelong glance. And what would your motto be, Martin Hensley? He grinned. Probably something like, when in doubt, make a joke and hope for the best. To his surprise, she laughed, a genuine melodic sound that seemed to catch even her off guard. Well, she said after a moment, I suppose there are worse mottos. As they walked back to their chambers, Martin felt a small but significant shift in the air between them. For all her regal composure, Zetheria was starting to let her guard down. Just a little. And for the first time, Martin began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he could survive this crazy situation after all. Martin had always thought of formal dinners as stuffy affairs, the kind of events where people wore uncomfortable clothes and ate food so tiny it might as well be a garnish. The Zalvonian equivalent, however, was an entirely different beast. He stood at the entrance of the grand feasting hall, gaping at the spectacle before him. The room was enormous, shaped like an elongated oval with tiered platforms that descended toward the center, where a glowing crystalline table stretched endlessly, lined with alien dignitaries. Above them floated orbs of light that pulsed softly, casting a golden hue across the hall. The air was filled with the hum of conversation, the occasional sharp trill of laughter, and the faint aroma of something that smelled suspiciously like roasted marshmallows. At first glance, the food seemed relatively normal: fruits, meats, and drinks in various colors and forms. Then Martin noticed one of the dishes appeared to be wriggling. "Please tell me that's not alive," he whispered to Cytherea, who stood beside him, regal and composed as ever. "It is not," she said simply. "That's not as reassuring as you think," Martin muttered, adjusting the high collar of his formal outfit. This one had even more embroidery than the last, and he felt like a walking piece of abstract art. The two of them began descending the steps, drawing the attention of the entire room. Conversations paused, and dozens of eyes, or their alien equivalents, fixed on them. Martin felt like a bug under a magnifying glass. "Is it just me, or do these people always stare like they're trying to figure out if I'm edible?" he asked under his breath. "Perhaps they are," Cytherea replied, her tone neutral. Martin shot her a look. "Was that a joke? Did you